Hello and welcome to the Canadian Condominium Institute podcast presented by the Grand River Chapter. I'm your host, Michelle Dyer, and twice a month we speak with people from across the condominium industry in Southern Ontario. From condo residents to managers to lawyers, engineers, contractors, boards, we aim to provide the community with tips, insights, and resources to better navigate your condominium life. If you like what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe. And if you're not a member with us, make sure to visit our website at cci-grc.ca and register today. We'd like to take a moment. Thank you, RLB LLP, for the awesome podcast studio. This episode is buying a brand new condo and the navigation that comes with that. I'm going to let my esteemed guests introduce themselves. I'll start with Brad.
Hello, my name is Brad Wells. I'm the president of Wilson Blanchard Management. We're a condominium management company, and I'm also currently the president of the Grand River Chapter. So thanks for having me.
Thank you.
My name is Chris Gabriel. I'm a condo owner and a director on multiple condo boards with almost 10 years of experience now, and all the condos I ever owned were brand new, so very fitted to be your guest today.
Thank you. In full disclosure, when I was a property manager as well, my role was brand new condos in Terrion. So between the three of us, we have a lot of insights on buying a brand new condominium. So let's set the stage. I have a budget. I now want to purchase a brand new home, whether that's a townhome, whether that's a condo apartment, whether that's a detached. I don't know. I'm looking at my budget. Looks like I can afford a condominium. Excellent. I walk into the sales office. I sit down and I say, I would like to buy this brand new condo. Okay, here you go. Here's the brand new condo. Congratulations, you're a brand new condo owner. Now what? This is where it starts to get fun. Okay, so let's start first and foremost with Chris. When you first bought, did you know what you were walking into when you walked into that sales office?
Well, let's say I had some experience from living in condos.
Okay.
So I think I had a pretty good idea. It was the overall convenience of not having to be the one looking after everything myself that attracted me to it. I certainly admit that. Did I know the intricacies of it all? No. Did I learn that on my first buy? Probably not. It was after.
Okay. So what did to purchase a brand new condominium makes sense to purchase a condominium makes sense if you don't want to do any of the work yourself. That totally makes that
it's
a lifestyle. That, absolutely. You are at the mercy of your neighbors. So, and you are paying condo fees. So you still have to pay for people to do those services. But a brand new condo, there's something to be said when you come in and you see all the brand new fixtures and all the brand new countertops and the brand new cupboards, and no one's touched a thing.
That's if the builder put everything in as promised.
But
that's another episode, right?
No, but that's part of it. That's fair enough. So you've bought this condominium. A lot of times when you're purchasing a brand new condominium, you're purchasing from a sales center.
Yeah.
You haven't seen anything
Brochures,
yet.
Yeah.
You have brochures, which is an artist rendering. Everybody should understand that. It's an artist's rendering of what the site might look like. You get plans of your unit that shows you where the bathroom is and how big the bedrooms are and where the kitchen is and how you're going to navigate the balcony if you should have one. It shows you all of that. So you go through the process, right? You go through the process of picking out your tile and picking out your counter and picking out your cupboards, and you go through all that, and you walk into your unit for the first time and the counter's wrong. What do you do? What do you do? Chris, what do you do?
Well, I mean, in that case, that's probably an easy one because that's under your Terrion, and you mentioned Terrion earlier, under the warranty program, because you would probably discover that during your what is called the pre-delivery inspection.
Yeah.
So you would put that on your form and get that corrected.
Right.
I think where it gets a lot trickier is the little things that you don't see right away.
Right.
When you live there for a while and suddenly got water through the ceiling, right?
Yeah.
That's where it gets trickier. So, there's the obvious, and then there's all the things that creep up on you.
Yeah. So that's a little bit different too. When you purchase a condominium that is already established and you're purchasing it from another owner, you know what you're getting because you walk in and you see everything in front of you. Not necessarily when it comes to leaks or something that could potentially happen living in a multi-level building, but you do see what you're getting. You see the counter, you see the aesthetics of it, right? So you don't necessarily have an inspection of that condominium, especially in today's environment, sales environment. There's not an inspection. But with a new condo, you always have the pre-delivery inspection.
You have the pre-delivery, you've got the 30 days,
Right.
and you even got the 1 and 2 year.
Okay.
So there's a couple of opportunities to get things at least documented. Doesn't mean it gets fixed, but at least you get documented. But you're right, if you're buying an older building or an older unit from a previous owner, you would not have that backup, like that warranty program.
What are the advantages of buying a brand new condo versus a condo that's been already established?
Yeah, well, I think the first is an investment opportunity.
Right.
So often, pre-build condominium units are more attractive sale. The builders want to get a bunch of those deposits in and help fund their project.
Right.
So the opportunity is there. Now, you may be paying that deposit 2, 3, 4 years before the thing is built.
Yes.
So there's that consideration when you're thinking of buying a condominium pre-build and from the developer. But there is that opportunity for investment that you likely are going to realize some return even before the thing is built.
Yep.
Right? And that's certainly one of the attractive things about buying before the thing is built, when it's a concept, right?
Yeah.
I think the other really important thing, and again, I wouldn't know this, and I don't think many purchasers know this unless you've been in the business for a while and have some experience with this. There's a lot of other considerations besides just the fixtures and what it looks like. There's a lot of legal implications,
Yes.
that are. You really have to read the documents, read that disclosure statement. That's that document that you get upon purchase that you have 10 days to review.
Yes.
It's going to give you a lot of things you may not be aware of as just hey, I love the location, I love the investment opportunity. There could be a lot of things that you want to be aware of.
Is that where the declaration, bylaws, and rules
Yeah,
are?
the draft, because they're draft at this point, of course.
Yes.
But that's where the draft declaration, bylaws, rules.
Yeah.
But also, is this part of a phased community? There could be other buildings down the road. Is there some commercial access to your property or your building? Is there allowance for rentals or not allowance for rentals? There's a lot of things that you really need to know, that should know as a purchaser. And my strong advice is to get some professional consulting advice in that purchase.
And so that's where it becomes interesting too, because with a new build, let me back up a bit. Declaration, rules, and bylaws is another podcast. You can go into our podcast list and take a look, and you can get all the information about that. But that's where it gets interesting. The phased condominiums, or what's coming next. Because if you buy in the first building and there's 3 other buildings coming, you know that for the next 3 years of your life, you're going to be stepping on construction. You're going to be stepping on, trucks coming in, and there's going to be a lot of noise, and there's going to be, hammers and nails and saws and excavation equipment, and you have a commercial. Okay, there's a commercial underneath, so there's a restaurant, there's a coffee shop, there's a gym. Activity, lots of activity. If you're expecting a quiet condo life, you're not going to get it. Not in something like that. I mean, I don't think you really do get a quiet condominium life anywhere, but...
Well, even in your first phase, right, in the first building, often what happens is as the building gets finished, people start moving in while it is still ongoing construction.
That's right.
And there's a lot of times where shared amenities, like a rooftop terrace, or like you mentioned, the gym, that may not actually be ready, and
That's
it may
right.
not be ready for quite a while, depending on the scheduling of everything else.
Right.
Like we had that in our building where a second tower went up, and as long as the grain was up, they couldn't open the rooftop terrace because there was the risk of things falling.
That's
Makes
right.
total sense, but it meant for 3 years there was no rooftop, there was no barbecue, there was none of that. That was in the sales brochure.
Right, and potentially your condo fees aren't quite paying for that gym yet, so that when it does open up, all of a sudden your condo fees go up without, or you're paying those condo fees for that gym and you can't use it.
I think
That's the worst
That's
part.
the complaint that the board gets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're paying for all these things and we're not actually using them.
Yeah, so,
Which is not true at that point, because often you don't pay yet.
you don't pay yet.
We don't clean it yet, so we're not charging that yet.
Yeah.
But
It's
the
perception.
perception is
It's the
there
perception
that
is
the
there.
services are not provided, and I think it's a fair point.
Yeah.
And there's certainly developers that fail on that, right? Like, and you mentioned earlier, even just the finishes. I will say, I have seen buildings where I walked in and I couldn't believe how close the finished product was to the sales brochure.
Right.
Where I was like, whoa. But I've also seen the opposite.
That's right.
And that's maybe more often the case.
I think it comes down to reputable builders, right? I mean, we have a lot of reputable builders around here. So, you know, I know a lot of people that buy those new ones that you know, are pleasantly surprised with what you just said it happens. But on the other side, it might not always, you know, occur that way. So you really have to be, do your research, not only into the community, but into that builder and see what other people have said about them. You can see everything on Google now, right? You can even talk to owners themselves. I know that sounds a little creepy to be hanging out of an old, you know, a building, but it's a research opportunity to say, hey, as you're going out to the parking lot, you live in this building, do you like this building? Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
People might get creeped out about it.
I haven't done that with condos, but I've done that with houses where I walked into a subdivision and said, hey, it was built by this developer, what do you think? And people told me, wouldn't do it again, so I actually ended up not buying from
Well,
them.
and
so
that's-
yeah, that's a very good suggestion.
The other challenge, at least in my experience with brand new builds, is you have the builder run board, and then it registers as a condominium, and now you need the owner board. There is a difference between the two. Mostly I've seen the biggest difference is expenses. And this is where it gets a little bit after the first year. So the builder builds the building, they own the building, they run the building. They get a bunch of deals when it comes to let's start with the elevator. The first year elevator expenses are covered. The builder doesn't pay for that. The first year of cleaning, the builder's already paid for that. So the first year of landscaping, the builder's already paid for that. You hit the second year when the board comes on, and what happens? What happens?
The owners start paying.
Right.
The owners start paying, yeah.
But when the owners start paying, the builder's now attracted you to come to the building and swearing to you that the condo fees are going to be around, let's just throw a number, $150 a month. Now you have an elevator to pay for, you have a landscaper to pay for, you've got a cleaner to pay for. Guess what? $150 a month isn't going to cut it. Does that happen?
Yeah, but I think the builder has an obligation to do an honest budget.
Yeah.
You think? You would think.
Well, and you know, as long as as long as we're going for the first year, if that budget doesn't cover it, the developer is actually on the hook.
On the hook. Yes.
Right? Now, if they grossly under budgeted, they may pay for that first year, but then, like you said, in the second year, it's still the ownership that needs to pick up the slack.
That's right.
Right? And I've seen it where they just missed a $60,000 internet contract altogether.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? And then they didn't even want to pay for the first year, arguing they got such a great deal for everyone that we should be grateful and just,
And pay for it
right?
yourself.
It's like,
so
no,
you should be-
it wasn't the budget. you
No,
know?
no.
But then, of course, we had to add it to the next year budget. And
Right.
those things, I want to say, may not happen too often, like where some big items just, got missed. Maybe that has a little bit to do with the experience of the builder. Maybe it happens more with newer, smaller companies. But once you got a little experience, that shouldn't happen. But even then, it's just, you can estimate as all you want. You need to run the building for at least 2, 3, 4 years to really realize, what it takes. And I always compare that with buying a new car. It says runs on 3 liters on 100 kilometers, and then you drive it, and it's 5 liters, and you're like, what just happened, right? Same thing. They made assumptions. They ran it all under perfect conditions. Great.
Yeah.
But then when you actually run it under normal conditions, right, it looks different.
And the reality is, and to give the builders some benefit here too, they're creating those sales documents and those first year budgets sometimes 5 years before they lived in.
Agreed.
And
Yeah.
so there are some escalation clauses often in there, but there's inflation and there's reality, and we know construction costs have gone up much higher than actual inflation. So there are other factors that will determine that spike in the second year. The other big factor, of course, is the reserve fund.
Yeah.
So the reserve fund study, the first one is done within that first year, and now an engineer has given the board, now the new owner elected board, the report to say, hey, the fees that you're putting into the reserve fund every month, you need to double that.
Yeah.
And that's another big consideration that you need to be aware of, that is very likely going to happen unless the builder's budget has a very significant amount of reserve fund contribution, which I would say is likely not the norm.
That's it.
Yeah.
For anybody interested, there is a podcast about reserve fund studies too. You can go back and have a listen to that. But that is true, that there isn't much consideration for that. And I can understand I'm not going to besmirch the builders for thinking that, but when you're building the building, you're not thinking 30 years in advance. That's up
And they're not obligated to.
And they're not obligated to. That's up to the owners to think 30 years in advance. I mean, in all fairness to the builders, they're thinking, I'm going to say 2 to 5 years, because that's when all the Tarion 1, 2, and 5, that's when all the big things come into play. But they're not considering the reserve fund, which the owner board has to. The other challenge, and I don't know if Chris can attest to this, is you had the builder, and the builder, they're not really interested in the rules. They don't care. They don't care that you put flowers on your balcony. They don't care that you're, drying salami. They don't care what you're doing, because they want to sell more units, so they don't care. Property manager comes in. Property manager cares. So board cares, right? Board cares that all of a sudden there are, animal pee pads on the balconies. Can't do that, right? Chris, you were on the boards with these brand new buildings. Did you experience some challenges with that?
Yeah, I've certainly seen developers, builders making concession sort of arrangements in the hallway, just do that, just park here, use that as your storage, whatever, right? And it was all maybe well intended. They were trying to do the owner a favor, or
Sure.
work something out to make everything work and happy. But yeah, and then the board comes in, the manager comes in, looks at it and says, well, but that doesn't really fly, right? And so yeah. Another one that I ran into is where people started complaining about the floating parking, right? And like Brett said earlier, those are the kind of things that you need to know before you move in. You have everything to know. You have to do your own work. Don't get surprised by those arrangements.
And just to explain that's a newer concept that's in some buildings now. Is,
Yes.
And again, as Chris said, when you're buying a condominium, especially in a high-rise, you need to know, are you purchasing a unitized parking spot? Are you purchasing a common element parking spot that you get exclusive use of? Or is it floating or open parking for all residents? And there's lots of these different variations, right?
Where you really just get the right to use it. You don't own the actual spot.
Right.
And I had people come to me and say, well, let's just change that. And I'm like, well...
doesn't work. Well, you can. It just takes a lot to do.
Well...
declaration change is a big thing. Again, Declaration Rules and Bylaws podcast.
Right. I mean, maybe you could do it if you were a single building, but in this case, it was actually a shared parking garage with 2 other buildings.
Oh, no, that's
and
not
everything was
happen.
written in a certain way to make this all work together. So there's no way it's ever going to get changed. Even if we found the 90% in our building to change the declaration, which is what you're saying, but it's not going to happen. And so I tell owners, I said, this is not, even if we tried, it wouldn't fly. And they are like all mad. And I'm like, yeah, but you bought it that way.
Yeah. I remember builders in particular allowing owners that had just moved in to park in visitor parking. And they had 2 cars, bought 1 parking space. Sales center said, oh, no problem, you can park in visitor. Documents come out. Property manager steps in, board steps in, going, whoa, what's happening over here? It says right here, no parking and visitor parking for owners, and all of a sudden now we're ticketing and towing, and it is not pretty.
That's true. Yeah. And by the way, that happens in established condominium corporations as well.
Without question,
right?
without question.
Where boards change or managers change, and
Yeah.
things have slipped over the years potentially, and that, so that you do get in that scenario in other communities as well.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Tarion, because Tarion is the I guess guiding body for new condominiums. So
For warranty.
You're right, for warranty. So it's interesting to me how many people never fill out the Tarion form they get. So I don't know how you've done it in the past, Chris or Brad, but I know in the past how I've done it is we have the engineer come in, the engineer does analysis of the common areas being anything that you don't own inside your 4 walls. for most part. And they come in and go, okay, the flat roof is a bit of a challenge. You might have this experience, you're not draining properly. And they analyze the entire building. They analyze your balconies and windows, but they need access to units to do that. Unless they're crawling up the building, which I had one engineer do. Frightening. Anyway, it's amazing to me how people don't know that they can fill out that form and say, okay, my balcony is on a tilt, or my balcony is doing this, or my patio door is doing that, and then there's the interior where you can fill out your own private Tarion. So there's
two forms, right?
So there's two. There's your inside where it says, okay, my my tap is broken, or, whatever, you need some more serious stuff than others, or I have a leak here, or this is happening. So when people don't fill out those forms, we don't know there's an issue. You don't know the board doesn't know there's a problem. The property manager doesn't know there's a problem. So to come back 2 years from now and go, well, this happened when you built it. What?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the Tarion.
I'll just comment on my experience and the more reputable engineers that do performance audits. So that's the engineering report where they analyze the common elements to prepare a deficiency report that's used for the Tarion warranty process.
And if I could interrupt, we have a lot of engineers in CCI, so have a look at our website and take a look, because you do need somebody who knows what they're talking about. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so the best recommendation I've found most recently is we don't want to rely only on those unit owner forms, which are observations of the common elements. So the balcony, or the unit door, or
the lobby,
the windows,
or
and other things. Owners, now it can be very helpful if they're bringing that information forward to be included or be inspected by the corporation's engineer. But I think we do want to allow for that, but knowing we're only going to get a 10-20% return rate or whatever it is, unfortunately. So we also want to be proactive as a corporation and get inspections of at least a sampling of units. So that might be 2 or 3 on every floor, or whatever that, some good sampling, so that the engineer can try to see if there's any pattern of concern around, especially with some of the forms that are returned. If they are identifying similar things, then the engineer can then proactively look at other units for similar issues. But not to be confused with the other form, which is for the in-unit warranty. Correct. Totally separate from the condo's warranty.
That's right. Yeah. And where I always find it interesting is the boards with Tarion Tarion can take a long time. So that's what people don't understand, is that Tarion can take years. It can take years to wrap up. It can take years to get things fixed. I remember, I think we were in year 5, year 4, and we were still arguing about rooftops. And we had mediators come in through Tarion, and it just so happened that we had a very convenient leak at a very convenient time, as the mediators were coming in going, wait a minute, no, this all needs to be redone. And the board refused. The board wanted to sign off on the Tarion because it became such a long process. They were just tired of it. And I get that. And the board had been the same board, and they're like, oh, can we just sign off on this? No, and I wouldn't let them. No, you're not signing off on this, because it's going to end up costing you more money. So when you sign off on a Tarion to say, okay, the builder's completed everything they need to complete and it's all done to our satisfaction, it's now in the board's hands when something goes wrong, correct?
I actually wanted to chime on your 2-hour satisfaction, because that is not really the criteria.
That's right.
Right? Tarion has a nice little list where it says exactly what is a deficiency and what isn't.
That's right.
What's not.
And I had a sliding door in my unit where I had over an inch gap on one side and not on the other, and it wasn't the door. It was the floor.
Right.
And the guy from Tarion is there with his little handheld laser, and he's going up and down the door and says, oh, la 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 la. Well, I'm not even sure this is covered. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like,
my
we're talking an inch. What is covered, right? So I'm not sure I want to say more about Tarion.
But this is where it gets to be kind of fluffy.
And I think that's one of the benefits of experienced property manager and CCI getting this education, because one of the realities of Tarion is owners and boards need to know the expectations.
Right.
Because they think often the expectation of Tarion is the be all and end all.
Fix it all.
It's not.
Yeah.
And Chris is right. It's very specific on what is covered and what is not covered.
Correct.
As down to, I remember one where there's a crack in a foundation wall. And literally in Tarion specs, it says what those widths of the cracks
That's
covered
right.
or what not
That's
covered,
right.
right?
Yeah, we
And-
had that. Yep.
And so, someone sees a crack in the foundation and they panic, and it's actually, well, that's within acceptable
Boundaries.
shifting and,
Yeah.
and standards. So
Yeah.
I think the expectation level needs to be also well understood by the boards and the owners of what they're going to get through the process.
Well, and that's it.
So
And
there's your expectation, what you want it to look like. There's Terrion's expectation, what is acceptable and what isn't. And then there is the developer, the builder's expectation, what is good enough for delivery.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
those three can be very different.
Yes.
And I will say that put everything that you find on your Terrion forms.
Mm-hmm.
Put it on there, because you can always take it off. You can't add it on after
later.
the deadline.
That's right.
Put it on. Terrion may tell you it's not covered.
Yeah.
Well, my experience is a lot of builders will try to fix it, or at least fix certain
Address
items
it, yeah.
and
Yeah,
try
they'll
to
try and
take
address
other
it, yeah.
items off
Yeah.
the list, right? They will negotiate that with you to some degree.
Yeah.
The more you have on there, the more you can negotiate and kind of give, right? Because at the end of the day, if you are not coming to a resolution with the developer directly, you will go to conciliation.
Yeah.
And I found that step is something that a lot of builders will try to avoid.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know exactly
I
the
don't know
implications.
why.
I
I don't
think
know
there
why.
is probably records or maybe penalties or who knows what.
Yeah.
But every time I was coming up to a conciliation, they seemed a little bit more willing to do this and that. And so even if it's not covered under Terrion, technically you may still get a fix.
Yeah.
Because the builder is trying to accommodate you in one way, hoping you get a little bit of,
Yeah.
buy on the other. So
It does become a negotiation when you reach that point,
Absolutely.
because the builder will say, okay, well, we'll fix that if you'll leave this,
Yeah.
or what, if you can say this is done, and Terrion will say, okay, that's not a deficiency, that's been fixed to the best of their ability, and Terrion will guide, they will help.
And you have to be aware that you can, play hardball and say, well, let's do the conciliation, right?
Yeah.
Thinking that Terrion is going to come in and show the builder the way, and they're going to say, just like Brad said, oh, but this is like an inch to, like an eighth of an inch too little, whatever,
Yeah,
right? It's
whatever
actually
it is.
not
It's
covered.
it's not a deficiency.
And then it falls
it's
off
not,
the
yeah.
list, and you
Yeah.
don't get anything.
And I think this
So-
circles back to that discussion though of the reputable builder. Like,
That's right.
and we don't want to be bashing builders, because there
No,
are many
but-
good ones, and there's many that are established within our community.
Yep.
And they want to be here not just for your building and your townhouse project. They want to be doing many more, and they want to protect their name and their reputation. And so they are willing to come to the table and try and resolve things. And ultimately want to walk away. They don't want to walk away in a big mess. They want the customer to be happy, and they can go on to their next project.
Well,
right?
and that's the thing. The longer the prolonging of the Terrion and the conciliation, the builder's done. By this point, the builder's like, can we just please move on from this project? We've got 16 other projects going on, and we need these people to move on. So yeah, they're willing to, at least in my experience, when we sat down in conciliation, they were like, okay, we'll fix it. Okay, we'll fix it. We'll fix it. Okay, we did it. And okay, this is it. And same thing, negotiation. All right, can we say this is done? Okay, fine, that's done. Right? But
you're talking very long timelines here too, right?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
There's reporting. You got a year to report it. Then they have so many months
well,
to
and then
fix
there's like
it.
the window you have to. There's the online portal, and you've got to report within a certain amount of time, and they have a certain amount of time to fix, and then you could be reporting that nothing's happened. Oh, they fixed that one. Okay, well they said they did, or they come back and say, oh yeah, we fixed that one, and you go, no, they didn't. And you're back and forth of all this.
Well, and even if you go to conciliation, then after that they get
There's
another
still
time to
another-
repair.
well-
and then you have, we're talking like
In
if
the
we're
case-
talking common elements. I think you could easily look at 7 years, maybe even
You
more.
could. And in the case of the one building where I ended up in conciliation, and that roof leak just was so convenient. Like, it couldn't have happened at a better time, where the flat roof, like, there was cracks in it, and it was pilling, and there was all sorts of stuff happening to this roof, and they kept trying to cover it over.
Patch
And there was
it,
a like,
patch it.
yeah, patch it. And it just so happened they just finished a patch, and that rainstorm came in, and we were there with Terry on that, and we watched it. It couldn't have happened at a better time. Like,
the only time you want a roof leak.
that's the only time you want a roof leak. It literally is when, Terrion is scheduled to come to the building. Like, it was a perfect timing. So we were able to, all 3 buildings in that community ended up getting all new roofs, because it was the same roof, the same provider, the same everything. Now, having said that, there was challenges with the subcontractor that it wasn't the builder's and this is part of the issue, is the builder takes on the reputation of the subcontractor, right? So the builder's now saying, okay, we built this place, but the subcontractor wasn't doing the build as they should have, but the builder doesn't realize, your name is on that. Yeah. So it doesn't matter who you use, Mr. Builder, your name is on that. So maybe you should spend the extra money and get a reputable roofer in to do the roof properly.
Or at least check and follow up, right? You still have a obligation to oversee, right?
That's right.
Even if you outsource it, it's not. Yeah,
that's right.
Still, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the positives, though. Let's talk, because we're kind of going toward all the night. Let's talk a little bit about the positives. So, brand new buildings, at least, like, let's talk about landscaping. I've seen landscaping be absolutely stunning at brand new buildings. Would you agree? Or, oh, he's looking at me like, no, wait a minute. Okay, tell me.
I have no doubt that exists, but I've also seen the opposite again, right? Like we have a building with planters in front of the building, and there's no water anywhere nearby to actually water the plants.
Yeah. By the way, new builders, install irrigation. I don't care where you are. Please, for the love of all that is holy, pay the extra money and install irrigation.
3 explanations why the builder has a good reason not to have it, because in 2023 we don't do any irrigation anymore because of we need to conserve water. Well, anyways, it was oversight. They didn't want to own it. But now you got these planters, and it's south-facing. It gets cooked in the summer. Oh my
goodness! You're never going to get anything done.
Cocktail, maybe, I don't know.
But that's one thing, though. The irrigation. Hey, let's talk. Okay, let's talk to the new builders. We're going to talk to the new builders right now. Let's talk about irrigation. Install it. Snow spaces. We need to put snow. Yes. And how many times have you had people complaining about the cost of hauling? Because that happens. But you have nowhere to put it.
Exactly, yeah.
So,
and it's even that. Like often you're hoping you have enough room at least to have a little bit of storage somewhere before you have to take it out. But even that doesn't often exist.
Well, and the reality is these developers are working with the municipalities that want density. Like
that's right.
They're trying to pack in as many units into space as possible.
Not just the snow, right? Yeah. There's the garbage pickup, and there's no space to have the bins out there.
That's right.
4 times a week in a big building, you're almost doing garbage pickup daily, right?
Yeah.
And there's no, we got this right now. We're talking about a shared private road. Can we actually make it one way? Right, so that we can use the space for garbage pickup or even for 15-minute parking, so that all the Uber Eats and whatnot can actually deliver. Yeah. Because right now they do that anyways.
Yeah.
But there's no real space for them, right? I think that to some degree goes back to what we said earlier. You build a building with a concept in mind and certain ideas, but once you actually get up and running with it, there's certain things that you just didn't think of.
Yeah. And 5 or 10 years ago, you didn't think about where the Ubers were going to park, right?
No, but 5 or 10 years ago, you also thought about snow. Like, I don't know where all of a sudden these new builds come in and there's literally nowhere.
So you haven't heard about climate change?
No, yeah.
There's no snow anymore.
No, there is no snow. Really? Tell the 45 centimeters we got in 3 weeks.
Right.
That's where it becomes an issue, is that you take a look at some of the landscape plans that as a contractor we receive for these new builds, and snow goes here in this little patch, and snow goes here and here and here, and you get to the site and they're like, literally a tiny little boulevard in between 2 units. Well, we can't pile snow there. And oh, by the way, that space you have over here for the main storage has a hydro box, a fire hydrant, and has 2 owners that back to back with driveways. What? How do you want us to do that? Apparently, we're going to have to get blades that snake around. I don't know how to do it. But that's where builders need to pay attention. But like you said, it's density. We are in a housing crisis. People that are looking at buying houses at 25 years old are not being able to buy houses, so they have to buy a condominium. They want to get in the market, condo's the way to go. And even then, some condos are not affordable. And now we're building higher and higher and higher, so those penthouses aren't happening, right?
Yeah.
So what do you say to people that are going to buy new? How do you communicate to them to let them know, okay, this could be a good investment if what?
Well, again, I go back to that original disclosure statement, the plan for the community, the builder's vision, and understanding all of the legalities that are in that document. Like there's a lot.
It's a lot.
You know, and again, when you're making that investment purchase or that first home purchase, and you're excited because you get on the waiting list and you get the purchase agreement, purchase and sale, and you sign your name, and then a few days later you're at the lawyer's office and you got that stack and they're just going like, sign here, sign here, sign here. Are you really aware of all those details, right? And do you really have a real estate agent and a lawyer that understand condo and can help explain it to you? I think to me, that's a crucial step in buying a condominium unit, is really having some advice on what you're purchasing. And because if you understand it, it can be a great lifestyle. It can be a great investment for you.
That's it.
And I think there's two sides to it. It's understanding your obligations as an owner, right? That you have to pay your condo fees, that there's certain things you cannot
Follow
do.
the rules,
Yeah.
So that's your obligations, but you also have rights, and understanding those as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say the next thing is the due process. What are my options if things are not working out? Who do I understand that, right? Do I talk to the manager? Do I talk to the developer? Do I talk to Tarion? Or
do I talk to my lawyer? Like it could reach that point, right? Some of the things in a new condo that people should be aware of: parking, pets,
People.
people.
Three Ps.
The three Ps.
Renting.
Yeah.
Short-term, long-term. That's
Is it allowed? Is it not allowed?
Yeah, is it not allowed? Yeah. Airbnb
Is-
seem to be a big thing right now, especially for investors, and a lot of condos don't allow that.
And
That's right.
you mentioned noise. I mean, you live in a very dense environment. A lot of modern buildings are not built to the same qualifications that they. The elevator, or you hear the garbage down the chute, right?
Yeah.
Or best example, probably the gym. Yeah, they
you
can't
hear
be as gentle with the weights as they want to be. You will
You
still
still hear
hear something, right? And then to go to the board and say, well, this needs to be fixed. Well, no, it doesn't. That is normal noise, and you kind of have to expect and accept that. And maybe to that point too, the corporation has to accommodate to some degree, but it's always measured against reasonability.
Right.
We had people say, shut the gym down. I said, no. We have 350 units who bought this building, with a gym.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just shut it down now because you live next to it and hear the noise.
That's right.
Right? So we brought in an engineer to look at it and do the soundproofing, right? So we do what is reasonable, but anything beyond that, if you don't like it, you may have to move.
But in the builder's documents, there's a whole thing in there that talks about the sound, because they have to come in and do a sound analysis and
building code requirements.
Yeah,
But
building code.
I find they do more like the railroad next door that's causing noise.
Yeah,
There's
the external rather than the internal.
The elevator as to the helicopter landing pad, right? Those kind of things.
Yeah, the external.
The noises within the building are usually not as much in the disclosure as you
would think. I always find that fascinating with noise, and I could always tell that the people that came into a brand new condominium who complained about noise were people coming from detached homes that are downsizing. Always. The ones that had lived in apartments and bought a condo, they didn't complain as much about the noise. I remember, quick story, a woman bought the unit above the garage door at a discount, and the garage door was below the spare room. And she was sleeping in the spare room. She didn't want to sleep in the master. She liked the spare room. But it was right above the garage door. And the garage door would open at 2 a.m. because people have the right to come and go. This is their home. And she didn't like that. She wanted a reduction in her condo fees. She brought it to the AGM and caused a ruckus at the AGM to the point that people asked her to leave, including myself. And then she got a meeting with the board, and the board sat down with her. She wanted us to shut the garage door down and not let people in or out between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. Again, reasonability. That is completely unreasonable to expect that a person who's coming home at 1 a.m. from an evening shift at work can't get into their home. And she did, anyway, the board was very, very accommodating and tried their best. They did engineering, and the engineer said that it has nothing to do with the garage door. It's the quietest garage door there is on the planet. The flooring is insulated. You're just hypersensitive. And she met with the board again, and we finally had a reasonable board that said, you know what, maybe condo living isn't for you. You reach a point, right?
I mean, this looks like it just wasn't a match.
Right.
But maybe this is a good point here to mention the CAT, the Condo Authority Tribunal. Because if you get into situations like that with the building, with the management, with the board, and you do not come to a resolution, then the CAD would be the next option. Again, knowing your rights, right? Knowing, like, leaning on the doc and the declaration, the bylaws, the rules, because that's really where it's laid out. And if you think you got your position is substantiated, but you can't get anywhere, then check with the CAD if that's the next step.
Yeah.
And I had that where staying with the gym and the noise, the person filed a claim, and I said, you know what? Good on them. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
We tried. The two parties tried. We didn't get to a resolution.
Yep.
Let someone else look at it. They will do a negotiation, a mediation, right? And then only in the last phase, if there's really no resolution to it, will be an arbitration, basically, right? So, but again, people yapping at the board or harassing the directors in the hallways, not the due process. That's not
the due process.
So
don't do that.
That's the natural reaction. You talk to the people that you can find, right? Instead of understanding what your actual rights and options are.
So, Brad, your final advice is just understand that disclosure, understand the declaration rules, bylaws, know what you're getting yourself into. Chris, any final words?
I think be prepared for those first 3-4 years where things will evolve.
Right.
What was sold to you was the developer's vision, and often well-intended, and a lot of it will pan out, but there will be other things that will have to change just because it's not practical. And we talked about the cost. The cost will go up. I can pretty much guarantee that.
Yeah.
But after 3-4 years, you'll also start seeing that leveling out, because now you know what your repair and maintenance actually is, and you get a better handle on your utilities and all that good stuff, right? So just be prepared that throughout these first 3-4 years, there's going to be some movement, there's some evolution, and some and the community also will have to grow together and figure out how they want to operate, right? It's not all.
I'll chime into that. I fully agree with Chris. I think the other advice is to get involved. Get involved. And right now, if you're listening to this podcast, you're trying to get some information about condo living. That's one piece. But take the seminars, read the articles and the blogs. Get involved on committees in the building or on the board. Run for the board.
Yep.
Those are important things to be involved in your community, and that first 3-4 years is very pivotal in that community in developing how it's going to be and what it's going to be like, and you can be a part of making that evolution happen.
That's it. Brad, Chris, thank you so much for joining today, and thank you for listening to another podcast of the Canadian Condominium Institute, aka the CCI, presented by the Grand River Chapter. My name is Michelle Dyer, and thank you for listening. Tell your friends. This podcast is available across all major podcast platforms, including Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube at CCI Grand River Chapter. Until next time.